So this is February 2019, and in April it will be the 40th anniversary, so to speak, of what I have been referring to lately as my spiritual awakening experience, which was outside the context of any particular religious belief system, but was an experience wherein I became free of any anxiety or doubt. And this was an experience that, to say the least, was pleasant and much welcome, and also which lasted a long time, many months and years actually. But in the context of that particular experience, as some of you who have watched other of my videos know, I scratched my head and tried to figure out what this was about and also how it could best be explained. And what I was most drawn to were the Mahayana Sutras, the Mahayana school of Buddhism, the great vehicle. And there are many, many wonderful scriptures within this school of Buddhism. The Prajnaparamita Sutras expressing the notion of emptiness, the Sukhabadi Sutras talking about the Pure Land, and of course ultimately I became identified primarily with the lineage of Shinran Shonin and the True Pure Land school. But the sutra that I was most enamored with and that I studied and dwelled in most deeply and had the most involvement with was the Lotus Sutra, the Threefold Lotus Sutra specifically. That particular volume, which I was fortunate back in 1979 to be able to get a copy of. I use the word involvement to reflect the fact that one does not necessarily just read the Lotus Sutra. If one permits oneself, one can be drawn into it and become really involved in it in terms of it somehow resonating with and touching the deepest part of our desires and aspirations. And so, again, I've continued to focus on the lotus over the course of these many decades and have done various things to try to expose other people to its profound teachings. But recently, actually working kind of backwards in a way, I have come to want to study more than I have in the past the Chinese Tiantai school of Buddhism, which evolved into Tendai school in Japan, into other forms also in other Mahayana countries. But this Tiantai school really took the Lotus Sutra as the king of sutras, the supreme sutra, if you will, within the Mahayana canon. And it was with the Lotus Sutra that they were able, in some sense, to sort of explain where all the other sutras sort of fit into the hierarchy, if you will, and also how the Lotus helped us understand, frankly, other religious traditions as well. So obviously the key teachings in the Lotus Sutra I've talked about as being chapter 2 regarding the one Buddha vehicle and expedient means, and of course chapter 16 regarding the eternal life of the Buddha, as well as chapter 25 about Avalokiteshvara, the regarder of the cries of the world, that wonderful sort of cosmic bodhisattva who represents infinite compassion. But again, both within the context of the Chantai school as well as a desire to continue my focus on the lotus, I came upon a particular author called Brook Ziporyn. And this gentleman, this Dr. Ziporyn, Professor Ziporyn, he wrote a book called Emptiness and Omnipresence. And this is a pretty amazing book. And one of the snippets from within this book that I've gotten permission from Indiana University Press to share with you in unabridged form is something he calls the Dolphin School. And in some ways, we can think of this as sort of a parable. The Lotus Sutra, as you know, if you've studied it at all, is filled with parables, filled with expedient teachings, ways that the Buddha has of communicating to us the nature of truth through these parables. And what Dr. Ziporyn does here is he creates a parable that tickled me and that I thought was quite interesting, and that I think any of you who have a desire to learn more about what makes the Lotus Sutra so important and special, that this parable, this story that he tells, certainly gives us one perspective on what is the Buddha trying to communicate? Because a lot of people, or at least some people, I guess, have looked at this sutra and have said, really, what is it teaching? In other words, that it talks about the importance of perpetuating the sutra itself, namely itself, the Lotus Sutra, but what is the actual substance of the teaching? And in this story, Professor Ziporyn, he gives us his perspective on this that I think is well worth focusing on. So I'll read this, and I'll actually read it off camera so that the quality of the audio is better. But I will bring to your attention before transitioning to the recitation to look at the description of the book in my description below this video, and there also a link to where it can be purchased through the Indiana University Press website with a discount code that for anybody that's interested, they can look at the whole thing. And again, the whole book really helps as an introduction to Tiantai Buddhism, which again, I'm more or less a novice at trying to learn about, but his style is entertaining and erudite, and I think it's well worth a read. So with that, I'll say Namo Mita Butsu, Namo Mita Butsu, Namo Mita Butsu.
The Dolphin School. To get a sense of why the Lotus Sutra is supposed to be a shocking and transformative teaching, let's try a little imaginative storytelling. This is, after all, what the Lotus Sutra itself often does, and then it goes on to identify this very activity, making up stories to try to illustrate a point in various ways, as what makes a Buddha, trying to look at things from different angles, from the viewpoint of one's dialogue partners, and then finding a way to communicate. Let's see what we can do. Imagine a guy, let's call him Bill Gautama, who comes to be very distressed by what he sees going on around him in the world. Life on earth seems beset by unavoidable problems. There's a kind of heaviness he notices in all of his experiences, no matter who he's with or where he is. He tries going to lots of different places around the world to see if things are any better. Among villages in the countryside, among hipsters in the big cities, alone on mountain tops, trekking with outdoorsmen through the wilderness, riding in caravans through the deserts, living in trees with monkeys in the jungle. But wherever he goes, he finds that whatever creatures he is with fail to get along, and all of them are struggling, both with each other and with their environments. After a long while of this, he vanishes for a few years. No one knows what has become of him. One day he reappears and announces that he has finally discovered the answer. For the past many years he has been living under the sea, where he discovered a totally harmonious and blissful society, the dolphins. It turns out, he says, that living on the surface of the earth was the problem. The heaviness that everyone was experiencing, which made everyone irritable and exhausted, was due to having to walk around on the land and the harsh conditions of scarcity it creates. It takes such a lot of effort to get what you need and get on the same page as everyone else, because we're all in an unnatural environment. The dolphins, on the contrary, flit about smoothly and nearly weightlessly, in grace and ease and plenty. As a result, it seems, they spontaneously love and understand each other. The good news, Bill Gautama now says, is that he's developed a technique by which all of us land creatures can learn to live underwater, to communicate with the dolphins, and join in their blissful life. They welcome us, and there is more than enough space for all of us there. Some small number of people take what he says to heart. Yes, they think, this life on land is hopeless. His description of that pervasive heaviness, we see exactly what he means. And since he has been such a reliable witness, because he seems to have such good judgment about this, we are inclined to believe him, and we try to learn his technique. Bill says, after all, that we can all go ahead and learn this technique and go live underwater ourselves to see for ourselves. He's not asking for any kind of blind faith, just to learn a technique, which he's being kind enough to teach us. Bill Gautama sets up some seminars in hotel ballrooms. At first only these few adventurous and already quite disenchanted souls turn up, but eventually the movement grows. Bill teaches everyone how to hold their breath for longer than usual. He instructs them in the use of scuba gear and how to gradually do without it. He introduces ways to begin transforming lungs into gills. He gives swimming lessons and begins to explain some basic phrases in the dolphin language. How do you do? Thank you. What's your name? And so on. As the movement grows, Bill Gautama can no longer do all the instruction himself. He gets some helpers from among his more advanced students. These are guys who have mastered the underwater breathing and swimming techniques, are masters of dolphin language already. In fact, they are now ready to go live in the dolphin world. But, out of the kindness of their hearts, they've agreed to stay here on the land and help Bill with the increasingly demanding teaching duties. For now there are thousands and thousands of people in all the countries around the globe who want to learn the dolphin technique. Bill's advanced helpers know all there is to know about the technique already, but he sometimes has to have special sessions with them to help them with their pedagogy. After all the teaching of the technique he's done personally, he's picked up a few pointers, common problems in the classroom, and troubleshooting methods, which he can share with them. Sometimes, at a big lecture to thousands of beginners, Bill will take a few minutes to praise and thank his advanced helpers. See these 5 guys here in the front row? These are my advanced helpers. Boy, have they been doing a great job. Let me tell you some of what they're able to do. And he goes on to list some of their many amazing skills and heroic deeds. This one, after long and arduous study and practice, has become great at upside-down underwater swimming. That's his specialty. That one is a master of gathering up the tastiest underwater plants. He can show you how to do that. And this one has made himself fluent in French, has taken it upon himself to live in France for 20 years in order to understand French culture and language and better teach the many French beginners who want to learn this technique. That one went off and got a degree in advanced engineering so that he could speak to engineers in a way they can understand. That one became a master of chess so that he could better express himself in terms of chess metaphors for some beginners who were having a hard time getting the hang of the technique but were very good at chess. All of these advanced helpers had learned language, skills, cultures, methods, lores of various places, all to better communicate the technique for learning to leave life on dry land forever and go join the dolphins at the bottom of the sea. And this goes on for many years. Then, one day, Bill Gautama says he has done all he can do. He's finally going to go ahead and move on to his long-anticipated life down there underwater with the dolphins. Fortunately, the advanced helpers will still be around to keep teaching the dolphin techniques to others in all of these various ways and languages, in whatever way is necessary, until everyone can make the big move to the underwater world. How lucky we are to have the advanced helpers! How extraordinary they are! How skillful! How compassionate! What would we do without them? Just before he's getting ready to move underwater, Bill holds another meeting. It is the Lotus Sutra. Here's what he says. All of my students are advanced helpers. This is big and astonishing news. Here in this hall we have thousands and thousands of beginners. Some are perhaps only curious, checking this out for the first time. Some have been trying and failing to learn to hold their breath for more than 30 seconds, the very first, most basic step in the whole technique. And now, Bill is saying in effect, Actually, each and every one of you who is hearing my voice right now is an advanced helper, one of these genius heroes who is at once so great at the technique in the dolphin language, at communicating the technique in all known human languages, and finding a way to reach all people who want to get off the land and into the sea, and who, in addition, are so compassionate and committed and selfless that they are willing to postpone their own move to that blissful state just to teach the technique to get there over and over and in unimaginably various different ways. We are also advanced helpers. How can this be? Bill Gautama has another, even more shocking secret up his sleeve, which he now reveals. It is this: there is no dolphin world. Or, to put it another way, he says, this and this alone is the real dolphin world. He is gesturing as he says this to the hall full of his beginner students. He is pointing to his students. This world, the world of human beings, the world experienced by deluded suffering novices, that is nirvana, the only nirvana, the end of suffering. Well, as you can imagine, all hell breaks loose. This doesn't make any sense. Nothing makes sense anymore if there's no dolphin world. This whole thing has suddenly become ridiculous. The whole point of all these seminars, of this whole worldwide organization, even of the advanced helpers learning all of these languages and methods, was to teach the technique to get to the dolphin world. If there's no dolphin world, what's the point of being an advanced helper? What's the point of learning the technique? Someone asks Bill Gautama these questions. He says, the only dolphin world, the world of grace and ease, where the seemingly inescapable heaviness of life on dry land and friction with one's fellow beings is finally cured, is this very activity of the advanced helpers in teaching you this meaningless technique. I made up the whole thing. All those stories about the dolphin world. Then I had to make up a technique. Anything, a random set of procedures, to be the subject matter that you'd be motivated to want to learn, and it would require lots of skills, lots of languages, lots of empathy to be able to teach. But it is this very process of teaching, of learning, of communicating in the empathic way, that is the real cure to the heaviness of life on dry land. This is the real water. These are the real dolphins. And you, all of you, in just being here learning this, what you were really learning was not the technique itself. You were learning how to teach the technique. You were witnessing the virtuosity of the advanced helpers. What we have all been teaching is not any particular content, but just how to teach, how to communicate, how to get along with each other. We were here as models that you were all unawares absorbing and being transformed by, so that you yourselves, in being communicated with, were learning how to communicate with others. Just being here doing this, we have been, unbeknownst to you, serving as a model that you are absorbing, emulating, coming to internalize. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha says, I come into the world only for one reason, to reveal the experience of what it's like to be a Buddha to all living beings. The contents of my teaching were all fictions, and beside the point. It was really only to reveal how to do it that I did it. You are all bodhisattvas, and this is the only nirvana. Bill Gautama has never been to the dolphin world either. He made the whole thing up, nor is he going there now as he bids his adieu. On the contrary, his going away to the dolphin world means he is staying here in this world, the only real dolphin world, and continuing to teach about the dolphin world forever. The dolphin world in our tale stands for nirvana. Bilgatama is the Buddha. The dolphin technique is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The people learning the technique are the Shravakas and Arhats. The advanced helpers are the Bodhisattvas. This is the situation in the Lotus Sutra. We think we are striving to learn a technique to eliminate suffering, but in so doing, we are actually, unbeknownst to ourselves, learning something far more exalted. We are learning to become bodhisattvas. In fact, we are all bodhisattvas without realizing it, and our practice of the bodhisattva path is going on right now. Not in spite of not realizing it, but because we don't realize it. We have never known what we are doing, and it is only in this way that we have thus far been able to actually do it. The Lotus Sutra itself is the news that allows us to know that we have not known in the past, to recognize our own bodhisattvahood in our own past lives of not knowing we were bodhisattvas, allowing us to take up this practice knowingly in the future. This seeing ourselves as always having been an unwitting bodhisattva is what the Lotus Sutra allows us to do. A bodhisattva, of course, is someone who transforms into all manner of different forms for the sake of instructing and transforming other beings. We are to see our present life as one of these forms that we have taken on as a consequence of our own forgotten bodhisattva vow, which we are now asked to reclaim. Regarding oneself as a bodhisattva is to regard all forms of being as forms in which one can and does take shape, out of compassion for the world. And it is this recognizing of ourselves in other lives that is the true meaning of the idea of rebirth, and of its constant invocation throughout the Lotus Sutra. It means to see all the past, present, and future existences of all beings as varying bodhisattva transformations of ourselves, and to see it this way right now.